So again, I would like to welcome all the people who have joined us online, so many of them, and here in person. We are very sorry that Urszula hasn't managed to join us in person, but we hope that she will join us next year, perhaps. It's my really great pleasure to introduce our colleague from Lublin. Urszula Niewiadomska-Flis is a professor of American literature and culture at the Catholic University of Lublin. And her research interests include representations and meanings of food in American literature and culture, US regional literature, especially literature of the American South, women's writing, American short stories, ethnic literatures, and American popular culture. She is the author of as many as 3 monographs: Aristocratic Ethos in Ellen Glasgow's and Walker Percy's fiction, The Southern Mystique, Food, Gender, and Houses in Southern Fiction and Films, and finally, Live and Let Dine, Food and Race in the Text of the American South, which was recognized in the European competition of the American Studies Network as the most outstanding authored monograph in American studies written in English by an European Americanist in the years 2016 and 17. And the panel of experts stated that Live and Let Dine leaves the readers with a sense of impressive sweep and control of the research material. It is an evidence of the author's deep theoretical knowledge and excellent orientation in the problem of critical race studies through the prism of food studies, and her ability to exercise critical and analytical judgment of wide-ranging scholarship. On top of everything, it is a highly readable book written in a style that's accessible to academia and beyond. Ulla has also edited 2 volumes, Dixie Matters, New Perspective on Southern Femininities and Masculinities, and Eccentric Souths, Reimagining Southern Centers and Peripheries. She was also a guest editor of the thematic issue Other Souths on page and screen of the Polish Journal of American Studies. And I have known, as most Americanists in Poland, I have known Ulla for many years as a brilliant and charismatic scholar who talks about her research with so much gusto that their listeners cannot help but share her enthusiasm. So with such an introduction, I would like to give the floor to Ulla. And again, thank you for joining us.
Anya, thank you so much for this generous introduction, and thank you so much for inviting me to contribute to American Studies Encounter series. Southern hip hop is my most recent research area. I have been fascinated by it a few years now, and I want to share my passion for this musical genre with you. So today's lecture, I will just start showing the screen. Today's lecture, okay. So today's lecture is called What You Know About the Dirty South, Southern Takeover of the Hip Hop Scene. Now, what you know about the Dirty South, is an infectious line in Goody Mob's song, Dirty South, featured on their debut album, Soul Food, from 1995. Now, this album, and especially this song, introduces the concept of the Dirty South, which is complex and multi-dimensional. Such a reference wonderfully insinuates the marginalization of Black Southern experience, not only in hip hop, but in American culture in general. It also foreshadows the fact that the Southern rappers will challenge preconceived notions of the South. But first things first, before I delve into the emergence of Southern hip hop, I need to go back to the genesis of hip hop. With this essential background, I will discuss the emergence of Southern hip hop as the third coast on the bi-coastal hip hop scene. Now, as a cultural movement, hip hop surfaced in the mid-1970s in New York City's borough of the Bronx. The Bronx experienced economic collapse. I mean, New York City in general, but it was mostly felt in the Bronx. The city's economy was failing. It was falling apart. Much of the white middle class moved to the suburbs to escape social and economic challenges. This white flight changed demographics and it segregated communities. Conditions worsened in communities of color, and this economic collapse brought rising crime, gang violence, and poverty. It resulted in urban youth turning to the streets for recreation and self-expression. So they organized block parties in abandoned buildings and parking lots. And those very parties are the foundation of hip hop culture. Music was provided by DJs and MCs through mobile sound systems that were introduced by Jamaican culture. Now, hip hop started as a collaboration among intersecting groups of Black, Latino, and Caribbean American youth at block parties, the community gatherings that would feature DJs playing soul and funk music. And the New York City's DJs, such as DJ Kool Herc or Grandmaster Flash or Afrika Bambaataa, who are known as the holy trinity of hip hop. So they began to experiment with different techniques during those parties. And those experimentations included longer breaks, turnable techniques, scratching, freestyle, and improvised vocals based on Jamaican toasting. They are often credited as being the pioneers of modern hip hop and rap music. We have to remember that hip hop is more than music. It is a cultural movement that incorporates different elements of art. 5 foundational elements characterize hip hop culture. The original main 4 pillars of hip hop include DJing, MCing, breaking, and visual art. These forms of expression have also developed into further subcultures with lasting legacies into the 21st century. As such, hip hop as a cultural and artistic phenomenon arose from the need of African American, Puerto Rican, and Caribbean youth to reflect on their lives, their histories, and their aspirations. For the disfranchised youth, perceived as maladjusted, menacing, and even deviant by mainstream culture, hip hop became a source of, quote, alternative identity formation and social status, unquote. As such, hip hop reflects on social, economic, political, and cultural realities and conditions of their lives. And it speaks to them. I mean, hip hop speaks to them in language and manner that they can understand and relate to. This reflection and self-affirmation in art is what hip hop fans valued. They indicate, and I'm quoting one fan, hip hop offers a counter-dominant message that they use as an affirmation of their experiences, unquote. So we should remember that hip hop originated among a generation which was born after the civil rights and Black Power movements. And as such, hip hop, quote, certainly captures the essence of the rebellious, courageous, creative, politically discontent teens and youngsters of the 1980s. Historically, this period of time was a fertile ground for such a cultural movement, since hip hop's breakout years in the early 80s coincided with the rise of multiculturalism movement and a radical political and aesthetic agenda that was used to broaden to give the chance to the marginalized to represent themselves in mainstream institutions and popular culture. So as I mentioned earlier, hip hop gained notoriety through the association with the immensely impoverished, crime-ridden, drug-infested area of the Bronx. Yet in the 1980s and 1990s, hip hop achieved acclaim outside the poor and ghettoized Bronx and Harlem, and reached a nationwide audience. For example, in 1979, hip-hop trio from the Sugar Hill Gang released what is now widely recognized as the first hip-hop record. It's called Rapper's Delight, and it reached the top 40 on the US Billboard charts. And soon it became a full-fledged musical genre. So 1979, sorry. Hip-hop became notorious at that point across the country. So throughout the 1980s, hip-hop captured the nation, the whole nation. And artists such as Run DMC and LL Cool J gained huge commercial success. So this is the golden era of hip-hop from mid-1980s till mid-1990s, okay? So this is the time when there's greater MTV exposure and more kind of encompassing themes would transform hip-hop from a local phenomenon in the Bronx into a national one, the one that finally would become a global phenomenon. By the late 1990s, hip-hop moved from the streets to the mainstream, and it became top-selling musical genre. When hip-hop gained nationwide visibility, it was making its mark on the West Coast as well. Hip-hop from the West was gangsta rap, and NWA were the most infamous group. The release of Straight Out of Compton quickly hit platinum status, even without radio support. So that was hardcore gangsta rap. It was the sound that became really popular on the West Side. Even though their song lyrics are packed with profanity, violence, and threats, and they rapped about police brutality, drugs, and racial profiling and whatnot. But their songs still gained a considerable amount of media attention. So this East Coast hip hop from New York was pitted against the West Coast hip hop from Los Angeles. And this dual representation and eventual rivalry of hip hop was framed by the media as a coastal rap war. And this rivalry was fueled by such powerhouse names as Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls. And I suppose that some of us might recognize the names and understand the repercussions that this West versus East Coast rap war had on the music in America in general. Now, this bi-coastal friction between the East and the West Coast was further complicated by the emergence of Southern hip hop artists, okay? So initially, it's interesting because initially Southern rappers were believed to be representatives of country rap, okay, quote unquote. And allegedly, if it is country, not urban, right, it is less sophisticated. So those, Southern country hip hop artists were pitted against the coastal rappers who already had an established reputation. So this alleged lyrical simplicity, okay, and again, this is the perspective of the West and the East. So this alleged lyrical simplicity, the use of regional slang, danceable rhythms, and party music style of hip hop initially alienated coastal rappers, producers, and listeners. That is why Southern rappers were unable to secure big national labels to promote their albums in the late 1980s and early 1990s. They turned to their own, that is why they turned to their own Southern independent record labels, like No Limit Records in New Orleans and Hypnotized Minds in Memphis. And they would also decide to appear on mixtapes, which is kind of an outdated phenomenon right now. But that was the thing, okay, mixtapes. So the mixtapes, they were produced by like DJ King Edward J in Atlanta. He's just absolutely amazing, okay? Or the mixtape game guru, DJ Spanish Fly from Memphis. And if you are interested in seeing how the whole culture of hip hop evolved in the South, these are the names to begin with, okay? So DJ King Edward and DJ Spanish Fly. Now, such a decision to release their albums with independent record labels and appear on mixtapes, okay, represented, quote, a seismic shift in the established geographical imaginary of rap music, unquote. So their marketing decision to independently release albums was motivated by at least two factors. First of all, as I said, Southern rappers were largely unacknowledged in the 1990s, okay? And that is why they were unable to secure contracts on either sides of the states. So they felt simply, quote, excluded by their Southernness from competing in a rap music market dominated by New York and Los Angeles, unquote. Moreover, what is interesting, they no longer wished to adhere to certain stylistic and, quote, stylistic and conceptual limitations. Again, they were believed to have this kind of countryness attached to them, right? So original slang, simplicity, lyrical simplicity, more primitive, more backwards. So they refused to adhere to this kind of conception of themselves as being, you know, the country rap. So what was perceived to be a weakness, interestingly, of Southern hip hop. So the regional affiliation seen in the language, in imagery used, album covers, right, became one of its greatest selling points at some point, okay? Now, change came with the success of hip hop crossovers. And honestly, I remember Criss Cross, listening to them on MTV. It was just the experience of, you know, of my youth. So I'm just so excited for me to be able to talk and analyze it from the perspective of how the genre evolved. So this budding Southern hip hop artist reached mainstream, okay, national audiences, thanks to youthful swagger of Criss Cross and the way they were wearing their pants. That was just the in thing in terms of fashion, okay? Or Arrested Development's folk sensibility as alternative to gangster rap, right? So they stylized themselves as the opposite, the alternative to gangster rap. Or TLC's crossover position of funk, urban pop, hip hop, R&B, okay? Or finally, we've got another bad creation and the new jack swing. So Outkast, that's the I think the milestone. So Outkast became the first Southern group to generate hip hop album sales equaling the success of the West and the East Coast. Although those were popular, okay, but Outkast was the first one, okay? Southern Cadillac music, sorry, that's the title of the debut album, okay? So Southern rap attained a mainstream national presence with the Source magazine's Best New Group Rap Group award given to Atlanta-based duo Outkast in 1995. Over the years, Outkast would receive critical acclaim, like 6 Grammy Awards, and achieve stunning commercial success. They over 20 million records sold, okay? As such, the duo helped steer Southern hip hop from the slighted peripheries to the position of major player, okay, in the hip hop soundscape. And I'm going to, okay, in a second, I'll play you a clip. So until Outkast's album, Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music from 1994, the rap music industry showed little interest in launching Southern albums, okay? The slighting of Southern hip hop was symbolically noticeable in the booing during the announcement of Big Boy's and Andre's victory at the Source Award ceremony, okay? Now I'm going to play you the part of this ceremony. Okay, this is this one, no, this one, okay. Anya, please tell me if you can hear the sound, okay?
That microphone created a diamond.
Can you hear?
It's fine, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you want full screen for the.
No, it's fine. I will just a short clip.
That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like this though. I'm tired of folks, you know what I'm saying? The closed-minded folks, you know what I'm saying? It's like we got a demo tape and nobody want to hear it, but it's like this, the South got something to say. That's all I got to say. Everybody.
Okay. So So they were booed when they were entering because the award was given in New York, in the cradle of hip hop culture, right? And those outsiders, those incomers, right? At that point, there were nobodies perceived as nobodies in New York, right? So they got the award for the best new rap group. So when they were, walking towards the stage, they were booed. And Andre, okay, he would respond to this dissing. The South got something to say, unquote. Okay, it was a harbinger of Southern rap becoming the third widely recognized regional genre of American hip hop. Now, 3 months later, after Outkast won the Best New Group trophy at the Source Awards, Cool Breeze, okay, of Goody Mob asked in a song, "What you know about the Dirty South?" Okay, nobody outside the South knew how to answer that question, okay? Now, one of the reasons was that before, there was no homogeneous concept of Southern hip hop, okay? There were many identities, many accents, many dances, many sounds from as many diverse states as Florida, Texas, Georgia, okay? So DJs and rappers and MCs and producers from the Southern cities made music, but not until mid-1990s did they form a collective, okay? Did they identify themselves under this umbrella term of the Dirty South? Now, while Southern hip hop was coming out from the musical underground to the mainstream, okay, Southern rappers began blending all their rap styles with Southern music, with Southern accents and Southern themes. So as an up-and-coming musical regional hip-hop genre, Southern hip-hop, before finding its own, okay, distinctive voice, related to Black experience in coastal hip-hop and claimed their identity as their own. And here we've got Atlanta's MCs Shy D, who sounded like a Run DMC on Miami bass beats, okay? So thanks to this tactical maneuver, many Southern rappers have a firm place in the Hall of Fame of Southern hip hop. So for example, and I'm sorry for the explicit content of some of the images I'm showing. So thanks to this tactical maneuver, for example, 2 Live Crew from Miami peddled sexually charged bass music. And in Atlanta, Little John distilled, quote, hardcore sounds from the West, bass beats from down in Florida, and assorted styles and imagery from up the north, unquote. Master P from New Orleans in Ghettos Trying to Kill Me, or the Ghetto Boys from Houston in Damn It Feels Good to Be a Gangsta, tapped into the West Coast style of gangsta rap, right? So they imitated the gangsta rap because this is what sold, right? This is what made money. So the Ghetto Boys' debut album, Making Trouble, okay, also touched on the dark and violent horror of horrorcore. Okay, there's the genre of horrorcore. While 3-6 Mafia, that you can see at the right bottom corner, they are mystic styles. They're from Memphis. They were a Southern outlier in the hard horrorcore style of hip hop. So these, there is also Houston's Gangsta Nip, one of the founding fathers of horrorcore hip hop. They rapped about killing children and eating body parts. So they were absolutely horrible and horrific. So these rappers, okay, secured lasting fame on the hip hop soundscape because they made references to the already existing images that are associated with rap in the West and the East Coast, okay? However, soon hip hop producers and DJs would add the element of Southernness, okay? So Pimp C began, for example, to incorporate church organs and blues guitars instead of jazz loops that were included in East Coast, or funk samples from West Coast. And for example, his production of UGK's album Super Tight, it's mostly visible. Or DJs like Greg Street began to play music from all over the South during his radio shifts in Dallas and Atlanta. So by stressing place-based identification, so the affinity with the South, with the Black Southern roots, okay? This is what gave rappers, allowed them to give authenticity, okay, and credibility to Black Southerners. Remember, before they were excluded from mainstream hip-hop representation, so this gave them credibility and authenticity to Black Southern lives. One Southern scholar claims, quote, "We didn't feel Southern because we were listening to Southern rap. We felt Southern rap because the tempo matched the cadence of our lives and kept a record of the peripheral cultures that shaped our language and movement," unquote. So the beginning of the new millennium witnessed the mainstream success of Ludacris, Goody Mob, Lil Jon, Lil Wayne, and others, who on the one hand, okay, exhibited regional pride, okay, and they tried to assert positive stereotypes about the South, but on the other hand, they acknowledged the South's troubling, quote, troubling racial history, its continuing record of Black on Black violence, and its corrupt judicial system, unquote. So those two competing narratives, right, the regional pride, but also kind of acknowledging the racial history of the region, okay? So they crystallized, okay, in the concept of the Dirty South. The term itself was introduced by, as I mentioned earlier, Atlanta-based group Goody Mob in the Dirty South song, one of the leading songs on the debut album Soul Food in 1995. The song presented a new culture, okay, in the American South through the perspective, okay, the perspective of Black men that included a new understanding of Southern culture, Southern history, Southern socio-economic and cultural contexts. Now, the concept of Dirty South not only plays on assumptions and you know, familiar stereotypes of the South as variously backwards, the South as abject, the South that is slow, that is corrupt, the South that is communal, down to earth, rural, and oversexed, as some of the scholars mentioned. But also this image of the Dirty South includes this dirtiness, okay, the dirt on someone, right? The dirtiness of the treatment of Southern Black folks, the dirt of the racial relations, okay? Even in the, and again, we are talking about post-civil rights era, okay? And this kind of image, okay, would de-romanticize, as if the belief that civil rights movement ended the racial and socioeconomic tensions, because it did not. It just made them less visible for some people, okay? However, when you look at Goody Mob, okay, from Atlanta, they complicate, okay? They complicate those associations of Southern dirtiness with corruption, poverty, lewdness, rusticity, drug and, you know, gun dealing, right? Because they don't reject the ugly aspect of the South, right? They embrace the marginalization of the Black Southerners, and they attempt to revise the narrative of their own culture, okay? Now, while Atlanta, okay, Atlanta is, it's the hub, right? So Atlanta moved from the margins to becoming hip hop's center of gravity. One scholar says that Atlanta was a center of gravity. It was part of a larger shift in hip hop innovation to the South. Now, rappers from other Southern cities drew national attention to the Dirty South as well. It was not just Goody Mob or Outkast from Atlanta, right? So remember that the phrase Dirty South is defined as a subculture of hip hop music emerging in halfway through 1990s. It highlighted Southern-based cultures such as Atlanta, Memphis crunk, or Miami bass, or New Orleans bounce, or Houston's chopped and screwed, that would embody the diversity of Southern hip hop. okay? Because we've got various sonic productions within this umbrella term of Southern hip hop. So the Dirty South was unique, okay, because it would provide this sound, this kind of sonic representation, and that would give voice to the cultural experience that was distinctly different from the two coastal West and East hip hops. Okay, now such rappers as Ghetto Boys from Houston, UGK from Port Arthur, Texas, Lil Jon and Chris Ludacris Bridges from Atlanta, Lil Wayne and Cash Money from New Orleans, 3 6 Mafia from Memphis, and Rick Ross from Miami. They embraced the Southern origins and they helped define the shape of Southern rap. They managed to successfully connect regional and racial identity. Okay, they, quote, earned them increased attention from listeners and critics alike, and a reputation as innovators of a fresh new sound and style of the hip hop culture, unquote. Now, Dirty South is a place-based hip hop subculture, okay? It includes dance party-based music. It includes skating rinks, skate rollers rinks where the white and black youth converged in Atlanta, okay? We've got strip clubs. There is luxury Cadillac cars. And often there was this objectifying women through pimp personas and with hypersexual lyrics, okay? So when the idea of the Dirty South moved from subcultural to broader term, to broader usage, and it was even appropriated by country and blues groups. Now, further sonic experimentation led to new musical developments. The developments were indigenous to Southern hip hop. So sonic divergences and various variations across the region point to the history of musical genres, which evolved in various parts of the South. So Southern hip hop, in fact, is only the latest manifestation of musical innovations, with Southern sources like blues, jazz, gospel, bluegrass, R&B, funk, and soul. So the musical legacy of blues, jazz, gospel, soul music, funk has contributed to the sound of Southern hip hop. Intra-regional influences gave hip hop its local flavors. So, for example, we would have bounce from New Orleans. Sorry, we've got funk and horrorcore from Memphis, or from Atlanta, we would get crank and trap. Okay, the later evolutions. So, as I mentioned earlier, while Atlanta is the undisputed capital of the Dirty South, okay, and the sonic versatility of Atlanta is undeniable, okay? Other major cities add to the kaleidoscopic soundscape of the Southern hip hop, okay? Again, remember, it's an umbrella term which encompasses various subgenres of hip hop. So each major Southern urban center not only derives its distinct aesthetic and lyrical narratives from the social cultural peculiarities, let's say, of Black Southern existence, but also, okay, those major Southern urban centers are affected by musical genres indigenous to specific Southern localities. So while this hip hop that I'm talking about today has this decidedly Southern, twang, there are sonic divergences, okay, variations across the regions, which I mentioned earlier: blues, jazz, gospel, soul, and funk, okay, which evolved in various parts of the South. Now, you have to remember that music is never really disconnected from its sociocultural locality. Music is geographically rooted. So originally, hip hop was intended for clubs and block parties, right? In New York. So Southern hip hop is performative and very interactive. It's got very danceable rhythms that encourage the audience to participate in the performance, right? In the clubs, for example, in Florida, in Miami. So music from the Dirty South included the ways in which rappers, DJs, and dancers, how they compose the sounds, songs, and imagery. That included a Southern drawl, the way Southerners speak, okay? Laid back ambience. They were heavy on bass. Those sounds would make use of simple call and response lyrics, right? Which, you know, take us back to the field hollers and call and response that, you know, they are used right now to energize, okay, the crowd, to control the crowd. This is what MCs and rappers adopt from the Southern oral tradition, okay, of field hollers and call and response, to energize the crowds with repetitive bounce inspired chants and shouts, okay? So this therapeutic release, okay, of pent-up stress and frustration gives this communal feel, okay, to Southern hip hop, much like the euphoria of Southern Black church-like exhilaration, okay? As such, the foundation of this musical and cultural traditions that make Southern hip hop make it regionally different, okay? And it's because of the history of slavery, carceral history, Jim Crow laws, which shaped Black Southern identity. Now, to give you the idea of the diversity of Southern hip hop, I'm going to briefly mention Southern hip hop centers and their respective take on hip hop, okay? So Miami bass is the South's original, okay? This is the original hip hop style. It originated with Roland TR-808 drum drums that were recorded by Two Live Crew. And I think the smash hit, Me So Horny, and the whole controversy connected with the release of this album speaks volumes about the fact that the Southern hip hop, the original hip hop, appeared in Miami in the 1980s. So it has got those, you know, danceable qualities, okay, Caribbean rhythms, call and response chanting, and the bounce of bass style music. It made it perfect, okay, for party style of hip hop. So there's kind of this party style quality of Miami version of hip hop. So this bass and booty sonic footprint, okay, would spread across the South. So this is where Southern hip hop originated. So the danceable qualities and bass music sensibility of Miami hip hop can be heard, for example, in New Orleans, okay? So bounce in NOLA in New Orleans resulted from the convergence. Again, it's kind of a hybrid, right? It's a convergence of bass, jazz heritage. We've got the second line from New Orleans, right? Second line tradition and jazz heritage. So DJs and rappers use this fast beat, okay, 808 beat, electronic percussion. They would use drums and Mardi Gras style chanting, okay, and they did use all of those to create this kind of hypnotic, okay, twerk-inducing dance. The twerking, it originated in the South, right? If you think about the dances, I'll be talking about the dances in a second. And we've got such hits as Jimmy's Where They At or Juvenile's Bounce for the Juvenile. And I'm going to hopefully play you to give you the taste Okay, where are they at? So this is the song, which would kind of induce the twerking, right? And that was the staple of Okay, so this is New Orleans sound of hip hop. Okay, so we've got this where they at or juveniles bounce for the juvenile. So the rowdiness of bounce also, interestingly, also helped shape gangster rap from NOLA. Okay, we've got violence and guns and projects that the African Americans lived in Cash Money and Master P songs. Now, gangster rhetoric in Southern hip hop was first featured in Ghetto Boys. Okay, this is the album Grip It on that other level. The record put Houston on the hip hop map in the early 1990s. So they tapped into gangsta kind of stylization, right? So we've got gangsta in tone. It kind of has got this bluesy feel, and there is bass music. Okay, so all those things as if converge in this album. So Houston's gangsta would soon become the mainstream voice of the Lone Star hip hop. Now, Ghetto Boys' debut album, Making Trouble, also touched on the dark and violent horror of horrorcore. And I think the 3-6 Mafia from Memphis, they're mostly recognized as the examples of horrorcore. So this was a more experimental, distinctly Texan, okay, syncopated sound, which would be celebrated in the mid-1990s. Now, there is one more sound which is associated with Houston. It's connected with the abuse of Purple Drunk, and Purple Drunk was it was also known as Sizzap or Texas tea. It was a concoction of codeine, cough syrup, okay, with soda or hard candy. It was a popular recreational combination in Texas in 1990s. So when rappers from Houston would when they started, abusing Purple Drink, okay, the drink would slow down that perception, okay? So we've got UGK or DJ Screw, who slowed down, instead of this, kind of fast beat, okay, 808 beat, we've got slowing down, upbeat up to 60 and 70 beats per minute. And if you think about that, Miami, okay, bass was 130 beats per minute, and Houston was 60, okay, half of the speed, let's say. So I'll just give you the example of the screw up, the screw sound of hip hop from. Okay, I can't see. Okay. Anya, I need help. How do I?
I can see the clip. It's just.
I need the other one. Okay, let me just. Okay, I just pressed something and. Sorry, it will be faster like this. Okay. So the hip hop from Florida, okay, and hip hop from NOLA from New Orleans, it was faster, right? Miami, it was 130-ish beats per minute. This one is 60 or 70. So.
Got a whole bunch of fried deals. I'm just kind of fried. I don't know why. I just popped up eating breakfast. That's why. Hey. Try to the
Okay, so this extremely slow tempo of UGK, as you can see here, the album Riding Dirty, and DJ Screws, he created this idea of, they were called screwed tapes. Okay, so this extremely slow tempo of UGK and DJ Screws screwed tapes resonated with the hot and humid climate of Texas, and it was perfect for laid-back driving. This kind of, you know, celebrating the sound and just slowing it down. So let me move to Memphis. Okay, Memphis. So while jazz and blues are in Memphis's musical genes, let's say, crunk is M-Town's greatest contribution to the evolution of Southern hip hop. The sonic signature of crunk, okay, includes high-pitched synth lines, heavy bass line, shouting vocals, and clapping rhythm, all of this is done in the call and response manner, okay? And there is at the background this pounding 808, you know, beats. So that's around, even sometimes in some songs it's like 180 beats per minute. So it's that fast, okay? So all those, this kind of signature, the sonic signature, is to engender specific audience response. They wanted the audience to get excited and wild. That was the purpose, okay? So crunk originated in Memphis. We've got 3-6 Mafias tear the club up, sorry. And then it was, I'll play you the clip. And then it was, let's say, transplanted to Atlanta. And then it was actually Atlanta that made it perfect, okay?
Man, it's gonna look like no club.
So this is
sure
The club will tell you this is the club.
Sure, look like a kiddie restaurant,
This is
man.
it. Last week I went here, man.
Tell the club up, 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 tell the club up. Just for all you player haters who be talking that, the 3-6 show no love, put some hurt on the trick. I'm busting through the crowd wild with my Anna. Be like quick to put, like who man is standing. I be the last man.
Okay, maybe the other.
I know that you
Okay, so this is the sample. Okay, too far. So crunk, as I said, originated in Memphis. Okay, and it was brought to Atlanta, and Atlanta brought it into vogue. Okay, we've got Lil Jon and the East Side Boys Get Crunk. Okay, Who You With, the album. So crunk was perfected by embracing the synthesizers that were originally marginal in Memphis. Okay, and Atlanta did more than this. Okay, when crunk became Southern hip hop's major export, okay, 2 new, less aggressive and slower genres such as trap and snap, okay, derived from it. So we've got Memphis crunk, which was adopted in Atlanta, and then in Atlanta it was perfected to the point that they created a sub-genres, right? From crunk we've got trap and snap. Now on the narrative level, you have to, on the narrative level, if you think about trap, focused on drug use, okay? They focused on project and violence, and sonically it combined 808 drums and hi-hat patterns, okay? Like, for example, T.I.'s trap music. Snap, which enjoyed great but quite brief mainstream popularity, would rely on the call and response, okay? This pattern, they kind of employed that pattern, call and response pattern. And they accompanied that by the sound of snapping. Okay, that's why we've got the trap as being under the influence of alcohol, drugs, alcohol, and snap because they were snapping their fingers. Okay. Now, when you look at Southern hip hop, and it's not just about the sonic experimentation. It's not about only about the narrative level, the lyrics, right? But it's also about the visual aesthetics. And what I mean by visual aesthetics is both the album covers and the performative representation, okay, in music videos. So those two, the covers and the performances would diverge from this visual presentation from the West and East Coast. Now, some Southern alternative hip hop groups transformed what was perceived as I mentioned earlier, the weakness into success. So instead of being ashamed of projected negative stereotypes of their identity, so I mentioned earlier, the stereotype was being, backwards, trashy, rural, right? They adopted this trashy, rural, country styling. For example, UGK in their song Bells to the Match. Others would fuse country music with hip hop to create country rap or hick hop, as it is called. For example, there is a group called a Field Mob and their song Project Dreams, okay? Still others would create cultural Southern hip hop, folk, ethnic funk. And I mentioned, this is the example of Arrested Development, which I mentioned earlier. In each case, an unapologetic acceptance, okay, of Southern sensibilities would reposition, okay, and would, in a way, I think, authenticate the narratives of Southern Black lives. And the lives that they did not deny were the lives of poverty, economic exclusion, and social inequality. And so this is the one of the common elements of those kind of authenticating the narrative of Black Southern lives. And one more thing, I mentioned the stereotype of being backward, trashy, rural, lewd, and primitive, right? So like negative stereotypes, violence has always defined the lives of Southern Black communities. And I'm talking about the violence captured in images from slavery. I'm talking about Jim Crow. I'm talking about the Red Dogs in Atlanta, the injustice, the abuse, and the perfidy that at the hands of white people, right, that the African Americans suffered. And there is also this dirtiness, as I mentioned, the dirtiness of drug and gun dealing, right? Which all of those would affect Black Southern experience. They are all encapsulated, right, in this term, the dirty South image, right? This is the image of anger. This is the image of pain. This is the image of aggression. And these are often embodied in what Matt Miller called the rap grotesque. So this aesthetic of distorted, grotesque, damaged, repressed Black bodies in turn alludes to the often revised image of Southern Black agency, which was erased, first of all, by chattel slavery, okay, and then Jim Crow laws. And no other images capture the essence of anti-Black racism as effectively as the Confederate flag and the news. So Southern rappers use the relics of white dominance to show the legacy of the Confederacy that it has effects on their lives, on the lives of Southern Black, in Southern Black communities. And here we've got MJG's cover of No More Glory. Okay, we've got Lil Jon's cover for Put Your Hood Up, or Outkast's Welcome to Atlanta song, or Lil Wayne's Georgia Bush dedication too. So they use, okay, they revisit, let's say, the current violence and inequality as historical residues, okay, of, again, chattel slavery, lynching, segregational rhetoric, right? And they would recurse to using the Confederacy flag in the costumes, in the videos, clips, and on album covers. And even one scholar mentioned that this kind of usage of this aesthetics, okay, is similar with the aesthetics of the Southern Gothic, okay? The shock of the grotesque, which comes from, you know, this is very graphic depiction of physical and sexual violence of African Americans, or this fantastic horror that is visible, or the, when you exaggerate something to the point of, you know, distorting it, okay? This is more, this is visible in the Southern Gothic, and it is demonstrated, for example, in Lil Wayne's video, Love Me, okay? From this album, I Am Not a Human Being too, okay? So while hip hop visual aesthetics transcend, okay, state lines in the South, there are visual elements which refer to the specificity of local social, cultural circumstances. As I mentioned earlier, we've got a gangster aesthetic from the ghetto hood visible in Houston's Ghetto Boys, We Can't Be Stopped, and Gangsta Grills, mixtape by, for example, DJ Drama. So the ghetto hood is kind of used to, the gangster rhetoric is used to describe the lives in the ghetto hood. There is one more variation on Houston's hip hop scene, which is called trill music. It's a combination of true and real. It's trill music. And it again refers to the experiences of the ghetto life in Houston. So this is the local kind of subgenre. So again, I mentioned earlier screw tapes, right, by DJ Screw. So this Houston urban sprawl, which necessitated car culture, right, also had an impact on Lone Star hip hop scene. So riding in swaggers, listening to hypnotic refrain, like, you know, bounce music, right, coming from, you know, woofers, is most memorably portrayed in the sled cars of Mike Jones, for example, Still Tipping, right, who is Mike Jones' album. So this Black social mobility and the position of is also expressed in not just in cars, right, in riding cars, swaggers, but also in bling bling, right? Bling bling is the shows of wealth through kind of, you know, shiny jewelry. You've got those cross necklaces and grills, right? Grills, the flashy, you know, clothes, but also the thing that they have got on their teeth, right? Grills. It is also visible in yachts. Sometimes they show off their mobility and upward mobility with yachts. When you think about Florida, we've got tropical heat and the party town status of Miami, right? It's obviously an element of local rap scene, right? We've got Caribbean music and cultural influences, and the proximity of the ocean and the ever-present beach parties, right? That would translate into this danceable music party style hip hop that is featured in nightclubs. So as I'm talking about dances, I'm just briefly going to mention that dances associated with Southern hip hop resulted from socio-cultural circumstances, yet again, and they performed various social functions. Yeek, that's the first hip hop dance style, which originated in Atlanta in mid-1980s. Yeeking combines low economic status of African Americans, youth culture, and roller skating, okay? The most widely recognized dance associated with hip hop is obviously twerking. I think everybody knows it. It came from New Orleans bounce. In Miami, we've got booty dances. Later, they were adopted by Atlanta as well. And those booty dances, again, originated from sexual dances in strip clubs, right? Okay, then we've got the flavor of bounce in NOLA hip hop in New Orleans, which would naturally include this second line tradition that will echo in buck dancing. Okay, and interestingly, there is a one interesting dance associated with Memphis, right? Because remember, this is the horrorcore, this is the gangster rap as well. So Memphis gangster walking, okay, evolved from the buck jump, right? It was, they were jumping like that, buck jump. So it took heavy stepping and arm, swaying. So they were walking as if, I think they walked as if they were marching in circles, okay, on the dance floor. It was actually initiated by DJ Spanish Fly Gangsta Walk video, right? And it evolved later on in a gangsta walk that was performed by 3-6 Mafia, for example. So we've got crank dancing, we've got gangster walking, we've got bounce music that affected Nola dancing, we've got booty dances and etc. So these, again, to show you that there is no single Southern hip hop dance, okay? There are various sub-regional variations which reflect the socio-cultural differences within the Southern states, so intra-regional differences. Now, whether through its visual aesthetics, so the performance or album covers, right? Or whether it's through lyrical narrative, so different kind of issues that Southern hip hop created, or the Southern twang, right? Southern hip hop artists challenged, first of all, preconceived notions of the South. They celebrated Southern regional distinctiveness, but also they would remain faithful to their local identities, okay? They have embraced their marginalization, I think. They have redefined the position of Southern hip hop on American culture, in American culture in general, okay? After all, Southern hip hop is called the Third Coast, right? We had the East Coast, and there's the West Coast, and then we've got the Third Coast. And to sum up, Southern hip hop resulted from what one scholar identified as a feeling born out at the crossroads of personal pride and outsider, something that belonged to you, that other people couldn't just borrow from or mimic so easily, okay? And Cool Breeze, as you can see the quote here from Goody Mob, explains that the Southern hip hop wants to give people a taste of the South. We wanted to make you all eat the Southern fried chicken, not chicken cordon bleu, not pineapple chicken. And with this, I'd like to thank you for inviting me and finding time to listen to my lecture. And I think, Anya, we've got some time for Q&A session.
Yes, thank you so much for this fascinating lecture. Yes, and let's open the floor for questions. So the people who have joined us online, you may ask your questions using your mic, or you may type them into the chat box. And I also would like to encourage the students in the room to ask questions, and we'll help you do that. Your face to the camera.
Hello.
Hello.
Alexandra Gabriel.
Yes. So my question would be, in what way was horrorcore used in Southern hip hop? I think it was Memphis. Simply the unfolding of the theme of violence and subjugation, or something more? Because to me, horrorcores bring to mind like really cutthroat fantasies more than the actual events.
Now, the first thing that comes to my mind is the fact that they would use this kind of graphic aesthetic, okay? So it's a horror hip hop, okay? Sometimes it's called death hip hop or death rap, okay? So making references to the ghetto life, okay, in Houston, right, by Ghetto Boys or 3-6 Mafia. So they would include elements of supernatural, occult, and even the the way videos were shot, okay, the clips were shot, they were supposed to create this psychological horror in you, right? With violence, violent content, imagery. I told you, in one song, the rappers, this is a minor group from Houston, but they alluded to murdering children and eating their bodies, right? And this is like, oh my goodness, this is like ghoulish. It's like slasher films, okay? Yes. So
so the intention behind that would be to,
I think, to scare people, right? To show that the African-American existence in the South was nothing like, you know, bed of roses. It was not a, you know, a pretty picture. So it was, they wanted, on the one hand, they wanted to show those disturbing images of the African-American existence that are connected with drug abuse, with racial violence, with police profiling, right? And they use the horror aesthetics, right, to create this adverse reaction in the viewers, I think. And I think it was highly controversial.
I believe so, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And actually, this horrorcore was blamed for instances of various violent acts in the States. For example, Columbine High School massacre, okay? Or for some kind of murders of law enforcement officers, or, you know, because they peddled the images of gang warfare and yeah.
Would you see that as related somehow to the Southern Gothic tradition that you have?
Yes, yes. But believe you me, there are instances of horrorcore in Polish hip hop. I didn't study that a lot, but I think if you look at horrorcore as the cradle is Houston and Memphis, right? So I think that it definitely has got this. It borrows the aesthetics from Southern Gothic and grotesque. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right, thank you. All right, any other questions? Pani Aleksandra Socha.
Hello.
Hi, I have a question, which is sort of a broader question about hip hop. There's been discussion in the past 5 or 10 years about the gentrification of hip hop, and certain rappers like Questlove or Ice Cube have spoken about this commercialization of hip hop. I wonder what you think about it. Do you think that it's in the capitalistic society, do you think it's inevitable, or do you think that it's a specific situation in the hip hop genre?
I think that this is the price you have to pay for making it to the mainstream, right? So at the beginning, it was the music of the streets. It was the music of the disfranchised, of those that were marginalized. And once the music was visible, it was noticeable on national soundscape, I think that this lure of this temptation, you know, gained lots of money, the bling bling, the, you know, kind of showing off your luxury, right? I think it was too big a temptation to miss that. So in a sense, right now, when you look at Southern hip hop, I think we would have quite a relative group of the rappers who would flaunt the affluence, right, which is the result of them selling albums, right? So the origins of Southern hip hop, I would identify with the ghettos, with the poverty, and with the, you know, violence-ridden communities of color, right? And now you're absolutely right. I do agree with you, and I see your point that there is this trend towards presenting the gentrified, those who made it, although there are groups that still have got this rural, folksy aesthetic that they employ in the videos, right? I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, thank you. And
okay.
I
think this is a general trend. I think this is the temptation that most artists have, right? When you look at country music, the same. It was supposed to be, you know, the music of the the salt of the earth, right? The people, the common people, and then they made careers like, you know, Dolly Parton. She's not, she's widely recognized, right? But I think there's this, yeah, this temptation, right?
That it has to do with the broadening scale of the audience.
Because you see, I am the best example of broadening the audience. I'm a white woman from Europe listening to Black hip hop from the South, right? This is how weird can it get, really, right? So I think that if they didn't, if they hadn't actually achieved this national fame, probably, okay, I specialize in Southern studies, so I might be able to, you know, finally at some point have contact with Southern hip hop. But to general audience, right, who just listen to music as kind of, you know, recreationally, right, then I don't think that, I'm not sure that Southern hip hop would reach audiences in Poland, right? Yeah. So I think the appeal that the Southern hip hop has, one of the things is that because they became notoriously national, let's say, right, hip hop genre, they were recognized, and then they could be this kind of export outside the States.
Right. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes. So do we have any questions in the chat?
We have two comments.
Yes, we have a comment from Michał and from Gabriel, thanking you for the fascinating talk.
Make one comment that when you listen to me, how many women did you notice? There was TLC, but that's
the ones on the cover.
Yes, that was the, yes, so that was the TLC, but that's a crossover, right? And there was the song from, let me just, I don't want to spoil the title. I lost it. From 1979, the Sugar Gang something. That was the first hit, right? So this was, this is a musical genre that is largely dominated, right, by men, African-American men, right? But there is, interestingly, there is one hip hop, there's one female rapper that is actually making it to the charts, Rhapsody, okay? And her album from 2019, I think it's Eve, okay? This is the first hit, this is her third album, okay? The first one was The Idea of Beautiful from 2012, and there was the Layla's Wisdom from 2017, and now she had this Eve album, and she invites women of color who have impact on African-American community, and so she's celebrating the female, right, in hip hop, again, because you've got lots of toxic masculinity, right? Objectifying women, you've got the lyrics that in some sense would peddle those kind of violent treatment of women, right? And here she is trying to reverse and to show that it is possible, right, to talk about hip hop not through the prism of misogynoir. That was the, you know, kind of combination of on the one hand we've got racism, and on the other hand we've got sexism, right? So this is I think this is interesting. And there is this a song from, yeah, the title was Funk You Up, okay? The song is by The Sequence. It's from 1979. And this is the first rap hit made by women and by Southern rap group, okay? So we have instances of female rappers, but they're not as popular, obviously, as male rappers.
So would you say that there are even fewer female performers in the South?
Oh, yes, definitely. You know, it's just, we've got, there are, I don't remember right now the name of the woman from, that is from NOLA. She is twerking a lot. Twerk It Up, I think that's the title of her song. So they are recognized in their local communities, but I don't think their fame goes outside the South, okay? So they're not the national export from the South.
And a way in which we can explain it, are there any other musical genres that Black female performers would rather choose if they are from the South rather than rap?
I think we would have R&B, if you think about soul, right? Some funk, obviously jazz and blues, but I think they are, if when you look at African-American community, if you think about the position of women in African-American community, how their voice was kind of hashed because of, first of all, racism towards African-Americans, and then because of sexism. And again, we've got Toni Morrison, right, discussing that in her novels. So I think, I'm not sure how soon this situation will change, okay? With this Rhapsody, right? With this her third album being, so I think it's a hit. And there is a chance that this narrative will change, but because of the sheer volume, okay, of Southern hip hop that made it to the, you know, to the lists, right? Like top 100, top 50, right? And there are no Southern female rappers there. So by the virtue of the whole, even comparison, the numbers, right, of Southern male rappers achieving such success and acclaim, and it's just a handful of Southern Black women.
Right, so there must be something about the specificity of Southern hip hop that does.
Yeah. Again, I don't think I don't specialize in hip hop. I mean, East or West Coast, right? I look at it from the prism of the South. I haven't heard about many, Queen Latifah, right? But there are some female rappers, right? But they are not majority, right? They are just still on the margins, right? They are peripheral voices, right?
That's definitely the case. Right, I have several questions. You have answered some of them, so. Right, regarding the crossover, and you have just said that you're not a specialist as far as the West Coast is concerned, but have you seen the Super Bowl performance?
No.
All right.
This year? Okay, I will definitely watch it. So, and that was a.
It was a tribute to West Coast gangsta rap. So
really?
All the stars, and paradoxically the same performers who would sing "Fuck the Police" suddenly made it to the national television, and so a lot of people commented on the boomerization of hip hop. Right? So we suddenly realized that the people who made hip hop and who created hip hop and listened to hip hop in this sort of countercultural way, and used it as resistance, suddenly get a Super Bowl show. So all right,
but can I just add one more thing? You're absolutely right that hip hop is commercialized right now. Look at the success of Old Town Road by Lil Nas X, right? With Billy Ray Cyrus, right? So this was a huge commercial success. This combination. So I think that it's interesting that we go back to the very roots, because when you look at Southern hip hop, it was the success of the crossover, okay, genres that made it to the Crisscross, TLC, Arrested Development, right? And now we've got Lil Nas X, who uses country and hip hop, right? And so in a way, he's able to reach the double audiences, right? Of hip hop and
goes beyond the toxic masculinity.
Yes, exactly, right.
Mhm. All right, great, wonderful. I mean, I have so many questions that I could still ask, but I have just noticed that our time is up. I will just take the last 10 seconds to thank you so much for joining us, and we really hope to see you in person maybe next year. So thank you.
It was a great pleasure, really. And talking about the South and talking about food, these are my two favorite topics to share with people. So it was just sheer pleasure, really. So thank you.